Hey guys, this is EckhartsLadder. Hello and welcome to another Star Wars Top 5, the series where, as the name would suggest, I count down the best of something within the Star Wars universe. Often these lists are dedicated to starships of some sort, and today's list is no different. Today specifically, we're looking at the top 5 greatest Imperial Star Destroyers in Star Wars Legends. Over the past few days and in the past few videos, I've been advertising the EckhartsLadder Discord pretty heavily. When I started, I think it must have been 2 days ago, we were at about 450 users. Now we're at about 750, which is great because you guys have been specifically helping me choose which videos I make, and that's perfect for me because I don't want to make stuff that you guys don't like, and as viewers, you guys only want to watch content that is geared towards you. I'm going to get to the video content in just a second, but if you guys want to help me choose which videos I make, you can either A, join the Discord and vote on my almost nightly polls that I put up, you can follow me on Twitter where I also put polls up, or you can join the Patreon where you'll not only get special rewards, but you'll also get access to certain Patreon only polls. Anyways, you can find links to all of those down in the description or in the pinned comment. But on to today's video, the top 5 Star Destroyers used by the Galactic Empire. In order to make this list interesting, and because I didn't just want to reiterate the same ships that everyone already knows about, I've made a few interesting rules here. The first and most important rule is that I'm only looking at ships in this episode that have the traditional Star Destroyer design. The pointed flying wedge, the triangle, the pizza slice, however you want to name it. So although they are very powerful, I'm not including, for example, the Eclipse Class Star Dreadnought or the Sovereign Class Star Dreadnought, or even something like the Allegiance Class Star Dreadnought, just because to me, they don't really look like the traditional Star Destroyer. On that note, the ranking here is based on power, not cool factor, although perhaps that would be a fun list for a different day. Also, we're looking at Imperial ships only, so no New Republic Star Destroyers, nothing like that. We're also only taking one ship of any given class, so we're not going to take, for example, the Manticore 3 and the Bellator because they're basically within the same class of ships. Similarly, we're not going to take an Imperial 1 and an Imperial 2 class Star Destroyer. Finally, we're not counting any one-off ships, so no prototype Star Destroyers, for example, no ships that you see in the background in one scene in a comic, nothing like that. So with my rather arduous rules out of the way, let's get right into it with number 5, the Imperial II class Star Destroyer. Now, I think some of you are going to be surprised for different reasons. There are probably some people that will see the Imperial II at number 5 and think, shouldn't this be a little higher? Well, on the other hand, there will probably be some people that see it at number 5 and say, well, I thought this ship was garbage. And really, both sides would be right to think so. When you watch the movies, you see that the Imperial Star Destroyers are incredibly menacing and kind of scary ships, but on the other hand, they don't really do anything. They're always looming there, but you never really see them do anything super badass. Then you have other media like Star Wars Rebels, where Imperial Star Destroyers are routinely knocked out of service or just generally evaded by the good guys. However, when you really dig deep into the lore, you realize that the Imperial Star Destroyer is quite a fearsome ship. On paper, this thing is basically a mobile weapons platform, packed to the brim with turbo lasers. Really, most notably and most dangerously in my eyes are the fearsome turbo laser batteries on each side of the ship's superstructure. Particularly in the old expanded universe, we also saw that a single Star Destroyer posed a great threat to any forces in the area. It could quite easily capture a planet and hold it, attack shipyards and important bases, and even take on many smaller ships at once. That being said, the Imperial Star Destroyer is really only the base and the foundation for the Star Destroyer line. There is bigger and better, as we'll get to right now, with number 4. The Allegiance Class Star Destroyer is essentially an upscale of the Imperial II, where the Imperial II is 1,600 meters, the Allegiance is 2,200. However, in addition, the ship also has some unique weapons. 6 trench gun batteries help protect an otherwise vulnerable spot on the ship, and 3 axial gun batteries provide additional firepower. Also significantly adding to the firepower is the addition of 2 octuple barbette gun batteries on each side of the ship. So instead of having 4 of the main weapons on each side of the superstructure, you have 6. That's a lot of extra firepower. This, especially when combined with the axial and trench-based weapons, make this quite a powerful ship and really even more of a mobile weapons platform than the Imperial II. The only downside to the ship is that it does not have the large hangar present on the Imperial class Star Destroyers. this is quite a loss because fighter support is very important in Star Wars space battles. We see instead that, like with the Eclipse Class Star Destroyer, this space is replaced with presumably extra energy systems for a stronger shield or perhaps more powerful weapons. I like this ship. Its lack of real hangars does kind of hamstring it in many tactical situations, but just the pure firepower would make it very useful in most engagements, especially with some support ships helping out. Ansel Howe, otherwise known as Fractal Sponge, who designed the most recent canonical iteration for the ship, at least in Star Wars Legends, often refers to this as a heavy Star Destroyer. I think that's a quite fitting name, and although the name itself isn't canon, I really like it. Number 3 is the Bellator Class Dreadnought, and yes, this technically, like the last ship, isn't a Star Destroyer, mostly due to its size. It falls into an upper class of ships, but still maintains the classic Star Destroyer design, which is why I've included it on this list. I've went over the Bellator a few times on this channel. It's basically a divergent line in the Mandator class of ships. The Mandator 1 was created before the Clone Wars and later upgraded by the Republic. The Mandator 2 was created afterwards during the time of the Republic. Then the Mandator 3 and the Bellator were both created during the time of the Galactic Empire. I call this a divergent line because although both the Mandator 3 and the Bellator are from the same class, they are drastically different. While the Mandator 3 is quite large, coming in at 12 kilometers, the Bellator instead focuses on speed, which is quite unique for a dreadnought. It's still quite large at 7 kilometers, so I'd say that mix of speed and most likely a lot of firepower makes this ship very, very unique. I also quite like the design, which is a mix of a traditional Star Destroyer and a Super Star Destroyer, and given that the Mandator 4 was recently introduced for The Last Jedi, it may make an appearance in the new canon at some point. We don't know the exact armaments for this ship within Legends continuity, however, given its size, it was most likely very well armed. I could have admittedly also used the Mandator 3 for this position, but given the fact that there's never been a published picture of this ship and we know far less about it than the Bellator, I thought it'd be a good idea to just go with what we know. Alright, so number 2 is probably going to be a controversial pick. Not controversial because people won't think that it deserves the number 2 spot, but because many will say that it actually deserves the number 1 spot. Anyway, it's the Executor Class Super Star Destroyer. There's not much that I can say about the Executor that you guys won't already know. It was not only a pure weapon of fear, but also a pure weapon of destruction, with over 2,000 turbo lasers, heavy turbo lasers, and other weapons. A single Executor could rival many New Republic and certainly most Rebel battle groups without any sort of difficulty. It could control an entire sector and really was almost unbeatable unless you had something very, very large. In Star Wars Legends, the Executors, although they were designed relatively early in continuity during the Galactic Civil War, remained relevant for dozens of years afterwards, including all the way up to the Yuzhang Vong War, where the Lusanka was a crucial part of the New Republic fleet. I see the Executor as powerful not only because of the sheer amount of weapons that it carried with it, but also because of the logistic capabilities that it allowed you to have. With an Executor, you could basically control an entire system. You had all of your troops, all of your weapons with you, you had full squadrons of TIE fighters, basically everything you needed to dominate. How then, you may be wondering, is it not number 1? Well, that's because I am perhaps a little biased, and because there is a ship that I like more, the Assertor Class Star Dreadnought. Like the Executor again, this technically falls under the Dreadnought category, but it still maintains the classic Star Destroyer design, albeit not to the same degree that the Executor does. I like the Assertor because it's very practical. I mean, it just looks practical, it's large, it clearly packs a lot of tonnage, and it's not quite as long as the Executor is, but I would say that it makes use of the space it does have more effectively. I mean, when you look at the surface of the ship, you don't see the kind of cityscape that the Super Star Destroyer has. Instead, you see groups of turbo laser batteries, just tons of firepower ready to be used at a moment's notice. Also, in a very Fractal Sponge way, the weapons are grouped in batteries, and an individual battery does usually have a few turbo lasers on it, so it's difficult to tell the exact firepower of this ship, but you can really tell that it packs a punch. Also, unlike the Executor, you wouldn't at all classify this ship as slim or narrow. It's very, very bulky and also very tall. I'd say that perhaps this ship doesn't have the logistics capacity of something like an Executor class Super Star Destroyer, but this thing looks absolutely designed for battle. One thing that I also like is that it doesn't have the overexposed bridge, at least to the same degree that the Executor has. That would also be helpful in battle. Also on that note, I like that this ship is also a command ship. It's meant to organize fleets, organize battle groups, and it's got really advanced sensors, which should make it just that much more effective in battle. I don't know, it may be my bias coming in. Perhaps I should do a Star Wars Starship versus on these two ships. Let me know down in the comments, but I think the Assertor does come out as the greatest Star Destroyer variant in Star Wars Legends history. That, however, is just my opinion. Take a second to vote right now in the upper right hand corner and let me know which one you think is best. Is it the Assertor, is it the Bellator, is it the Super Star Destroyer, or is it something else? Also let me know down in the comments whether you enjoyed this video, whether you learned something, whether I missed something, anything like that. If you haven't already, also let me know your suggestions for future videos. Anyways, thank you so much for watching, guys. As always, may the Force be with you.